Good afternoon, Karen.
Hi, David. How are you today?
I'm having a great day. Thank
Good.
you. I appreciate you joining me to share this information to our audience. Uh, my name is David Cope, and I'm the founder with my partner Peggy Litt with a New Life Center. And at a New Life Center, we help people heal themselves and build relationships with themselves. And I've been involved in working in relationships with myself and others for the last 15 years. And I started being involved in relationships specifically because I got divorced in 2000, and I wanted to find a way to build an intimate relationship with another woman, and it became very important to me. And I realized that uh, in order to have a loving, intimate relationship with another woman, I had to have that relationship with myself first. So this relationship class has evolved over probably 10 years of my own personal journey of looking at building a relationship with myself and working with my partner, Peggy. So I'm glad to be here to help present some of the information that we've learned and to share. Today, Karen, we're going to talk about why women are not really in touch with their emotions. And so, can you talk a little bit about yourself, Karen, and introduce yourself?
I can. I'm Karen Seitz, and I am the lead teacher at a New Life Center for the relationship program that we have. I've been training in and doing this work for almost 4 years now. And the area of my life that I'm most significantly building a relationship with myself is through the context of my marriage. So this work is very near and dear to me and my heart because it's completely changed how I experience myself, and it's turned my marriage around from headed for a divorce to having a thriving, rewarding, fulfilling marriage that I didn't think was possible. So,
Wonderful.
and it did have to come from realizing how out of touch I was with my emotions. Although when I started, I would have argued against that pretty stubbornly. That who are you to tell
Yeah,
me I'm not in touch with my emotions? But
yeah.
that was the first place I really had to start, and it's pretty profound to look at.
Good. Well, thank you, Karen. Well, I might take a minute and say, well, who am I, David Cope, to tell a woman that she's not really in touch with her emotions? And that really stems from the work that we've developed at a New Life Center over the last 10 years in grief and loss. I developed a program that allows individuals to heal from the pain of their loss, whether it's from a death of a loved one or pet or a foreclosure or a miscarriage. And we trained therapists in this groundbreaking process that allows people to heal from their loss. And in this study and research that we did at a New Life Center, we found that women were no more in touch and capable of feeling grief and loss than men were. And the myth is that women are in touch with their emotions and men tend to be um, not in touch with their emotions. But in the research we did, as I mentioned, what happens is women become emotional. And in relationships, what happens is that because they feel like they're emotional, meaning they get excited about something where men tend to withdraw, they interpret their emotional state as being in touch with their emotions. But what we learned in the research and study of grief and loss is that men and women both suppress their emotions. And that's why we struggle so much with healing ourselves in loss, is because we have never been learned how to address our emotions and to feel into them, because the mind convinces us if we go into our emotions that we will feel pain, and the mind purposely creates ways to prevent us from feeling pain. So in relationships, it's really important for women to understand when they're dealing with their men to have a healthy relationship is that just because you're emotional or you need to talk things out to process your feelings and emotions, the mechanics of doing that is just a way of actually suppressing, and being emotional is not in touch with your emotions. So when we work with people in our relationship class, we help them, the women, understand what it means to be in touch with your emotions and allow their men to find their own way to be in touch with their emotions. Because when you're in a relationship with a good man, Karen, are you aware that the man that your husband has a strong emotion, is an aware, and how did you begin to discern this awareness?
It's so much clearer to me than it ever has been, that my husband feels deeply and has an emotional experience. I had to get to the place of being honest with myself that I, for so long, didn't believe that men even had feelings, because how I interpreted men and how they suppress their emotions or how they process and work through them looks very different than me as a woman. And I interpreted that as, well, they just must not have feelings at all, which then led me to treat my husband in a way that was not kind and not understanding and not at all empathetic of his own experience as a human. I dismissed his emotions and feelings simply because I wasn't in touch with my own, really, was what was going on. I wasn't honest about my own emotional experience. So I projected that and put that onto my husband, that he didn't have an emotional experience. So I didn't have to really look at myself. So I'd say that being honest was really important.
Thank you, Karen. You were trained in the healthy grieving process that I mentioned. When did you begin to realize that you weren't in touch with your emotions, even though as a woman, it's often a common thing for a
Yeah.
woman to say, I'm in touch with my emotions.
Yeah. I want to say, well, my very first day that I ever took a training, but if I'm being honest, I could hear that. I could hear that, but I didn't really want to know it. So it took me a while to really get to the place to realize how out of touch I was. And for me, what I had to look at was what Peggy and I did a video on not too long ago, was my happy pill, and how I pretended that everything was great all the time as a way to suppress what was really going on with me. And that took me a little bit to really grasp and experience for myself how out of touch I was. But the deeper that I dove into this work and the more willing I was to build that relationship with myself, the more imperative I realized it was for me to be honest about that part of myself.
Great. Thank you, Karen. So the website, the group that we're talking to is about creating intimacy in marriage. And one of the biggest complaints that women have in marriages is the lack of intimacy with their husband. And they often wish or complain that their husband's not emotionally attuned to them. And that's one of the things they would like the most. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because if as a woman, if you can begin to grasp that you're not really in touch with your emotions the way you believe that you are, and when we're not in touch with our own emotions, what the mind does is it causes us to put the responsibility of our emotional state in the hands of our partner, believing that if we feel we're in touch with our emotions and our husband isn't, then that we project onto them that they are the source of our feeling not emotionally attuned to ourselves. So when we begin to realize that both men and women are challenged in being in touch with their emotions, and we can learn how to be in touch with emotions in the programs that we offer, then we don't look to our husbands to need to be emotionally attuned, because when we are emotionally attuned to ourselves and understand our emotional state, then we no longer need our husbands to be emotionally attuned to us. It becomes superfluous. So in the programs, we help women understand that when they can be in touch with their emotions by building a relationship with themselves, which is the foundation of authentic intimacy, they no longer need that from their husbands, and they allow their husbands to process their emotions in a natural, normal way, and actually discover that their husbands do have feelings and that they are very much in touch with their emotions and have a capacity to express them, but in their own way.
Yeah. And it's so much easier. I spent so much time and energy focusing on my husband and wanting him to emotionally validate me, to get me, to understand me. And it was all coming from a place of because I didn't understand myself. So when I finally opened up to realizing I wasn't going to change my husband and that I cared enough about my marriage to do the work on me, then I didn't have to put all that energy towards my husband anymore. And it became fun to explore myself in a way and get in touch with my emotions in a real and honest way that I had never done before. And just by doing that, things dramatically changed between my husband and I, because he no longer felt that pressure from me. And it just made things so much more fun. It's really worth it to look at that and start to take responsibility for that.
Thank you, Karen. In teaching the relationship course over the years, I realized one of the most triggering concepts that we talk about is venting. That how women vent to their husbands and how they feel that it's the responsibility of the husband to allow them to vent. And what we've learned in our research is that a healthy relationship requires a woman to be responsible for their own emotional state. And in the process of venting, they are putting their own emotional state onto their husband and expecting their husband to be there to deal with their emotional state when they do not have the capacity to do it within themselves. So one of the things that we've learned is that venting is not healthy in a relationship, and a woman needs to be responsible for her own emotional state. And it's not the responsibility of her husband. Can you share a little bit about your understanding of venting and what you learned, and maybe how triggering that might have been to you when you first heard that your husband is not your girlfriend?
Oh, yeah. That was really triggering because I was used to just dumping on my husband anything I was frustrated with, whether that was at work or with my family. Or when I was in college and in school, I remember coming home just so fired up about all these things and so upset and just unloading on him. And I could see him get so overwhelmed, but there was nothing in me that wanted to stop or knew that that was unhealthy. Because for me, I thought I was sharing and opening up to him when really I was just being a victim, meaning blaming these other things for my own experience, and then just wanting him to listen, which goes against his nature as a man, because as a good man, it's in his nature to want to fix and find solutions. And when I vented, I didn't want any solutions to my problems. I just wanted to wallow in them. So it shut him out because he's sitting there, and he tried to pipe up every once in a while and say, well, have you thought about this? What if you did this? And it was just like, no, don't give me any solutions. I just want to share with you about this. Don't try to fix it, which now in hindsight, I know was showing me I didn't want to fix my problems. I wanted to stay stuck in them because it gave me an excuse to hide in my life and not put myself out there and be the best version of me that I could be. And it was very triggering to know that, because then it was like, well, what am I supposed to talk about, or how am I supposed to relate and connect? And it took a while, but once I started to grasp that, and that my husband wasn't my girlfriend, that he was my husband, and in fact a man, and how I share it with him looks much different now. It feels so much better.
Like? Someone was, so what?
Yeah.
You mean I'm not supposed to share my feelings and what's going on in my life?
Yeah, it's
what is healthy sharing in an intimate relationship?
You know, I had an experience of this last night that felt so good. Before, I would come to my husband in emotional distress and so worked up and so dramatic. And now it's when I work through something and I've learned something about myself, and I want to be vulnerable with him and share with him who I really am. That's healthy communicating. And yesterday, my mom and dad are moving out of my childhood home and have sold their home, and that process completed yesterday. And I talked to my mom, and I had the chance then to feel through what came up for me in a healthy way. And then I got to go home and tell my husband, my mom and dad are done with the house, and they're all moved out. And I was able to share that without being emotional and being a victim to it and wallowing in it, because I had done my work. And then we were able to connect, and yeah, so how are you feeling? And I was able to say, it was tough, but now I'm so happy for my mom and dad, and I know this is a really good thing, and I'm just so happy I have the good memories I have, and now it's time to move forward. And I could see the relief in him, that I wasn't dumping on him and wallowing in that, and that we could just share in it. And that's what it looks like now, and it's so much easier. It feels better to me too.
And why is that an intimate experience? Often we get confused with intimacy, meaning somebody makes me feel a certain way or does a certain thing to me to make me feel like it's being intimate. Yeah. Why is intimacy actually the reverse of that? With it, that we have to have the relationship with ourselves and feel intimate and share our own intimacy.
Yeah, that for me, what I'm learning is that true intimacy is this willingness to show up as myself completely without needing anything from my husband.
Wow.
To share from a place where I don't need him to validate me or understand me or get it. I'm just showing up as myself, not knowing how he's going to respond, and having no expectations, just accepting him for who he is. Because in that understanding of myself and showing up complete and whole in me, I'm already accepting myself fully. So I don't need him to meet me someplace or accept me, because I'm already doing that for myself. And that builds the closeness, because I fully accept him.
That was pretty clear. Yeah. Very exciting. Thank you for sharing that. That was wonderful. So, Karen, can you kind of do an overview of what we've been talking about today? Because I think sometimes it's hard for me as a man to be in a position, and often women have a hard time, like we said in the beginning. Well, how does he know? And what business does a man to tell a woman whether she's in touch with her emotions or not? And of course, it is because we've been doing research for almost 15 years about this in many different ways. But from a woman's perspective, why do you know that you women are not really in touch with their emotions? And how would you like to sum this up for what we've learned today?
I think what's really important is to go back to the beginning of what David stressed when we started this, is that men and women both equally suppress their emotional experience. So there's a myth in our culture and society that women are more in touch with their emotions than men, because as women, we get emotional. That's not feeling and being in touch with my emotional experience. That's a way to avoid it. Men tend to go into what we call their man cave and shut down and not talk about things. Both ways, how men do it and how women do it, are both equally suppressing emotions. And we've discovered this and know this through our research with grief and loss, and working with men and women and watching how we each deal with our emotions, and how this relates into marriage and relationships and authentic intimacy is that if I'm not in touch with my emotional state, I'm constantly looking for my husband to understand me and validate me and my emotional experience, which causes a disconnection because I need to be able to do those things for myself. That's how I am responsible for my happiness and how I change my own experience of myself, of my life, of my marriage, is being responsible for what's happening within me emotionally. And I need to know what's going on. I can't expect my husband to know what's going on. And what happens in a marriage when we don't do that is we tend to then vent, and we want our husbands to just listen and take it. And then we're not being aware of their own experience and their feelings, which builds further and further a distance between us. So really sharing and opening up and having intimacy in a marriage or a relationship is the willingness to show up as me, already complete and whole in myself, and accepting me. And then I can just share about what I'm learning and how I'm growing and things I'm excited about in life, rather than complaining and, pardon my language, but bitching and not really wanting to do anything about my problems. And all of this links back into taking responsibility for our happiness. It's not my husband's job to emotionally validate me or listen to me complain about the things in my life that I'm not doing anything about, quite frankly. So this, when I'm able to know my own experience and then do something about it and change, then I get to share the good things with my husband. And then when I do that, he's wide open. He's like, yeah, because fundamentally good men, all they want, ladies, is for us to be happy.
Say that again.
Fundamentally, I promise you, and I give this assignment to my clients, and only about half of them do it. But I tell them, when they're with a good man, again, all this information is in the context of being with a good man. I let them know, go home and ask your husband what he wants most for you. And I would bet $100 that he says, I just want you to be happy. At a fundamental level, your man just wants you to be happy. And when you do that, which is your responsibility, not for him to make you happy, but when you take responsibility for that, then he's there ready to show up. He's engaged because he sees you're happy, which he takes as, okay, things are going well. And it takes the pressure off him to try to make you happy. And that's the real issue. That's the real problem, is we're not happy. We're not doing anything about it. So when we do something about it, it turns everything around, because that's all he wants, is for you to be happy.
Thank you, Karen. Could you just review the things that are important, the three things we want to remind our listeners that make what we're teaching in this group and intimacy different than what they might experience out there with other books or therapists or counseling or programs?
Yeah, this group is about three main things: that you are 100% responsible for your happiness, that you are the only one that you can change, meaning you can't change your husband. It's impossible to change anyone. So you can only change yourself. And that authentic intimacy is actually about having a deep relationship with yourself and feeling good about yourself, which comes from being willing to do the work to see how you are unhappy and uncovering the ways in which you don't feel good about yourself. And that's what creates intimacy. And that's what we're teaching here, and continue to highlight. This isn't about what you can get your husband to do to create intimacy. That doesn't work. It's so much easier to just work on yourself and change yourself. And if you are with a good man, You will see transformative changes within your marriage. But not only that, when you have a deep relationship with yourself and you feel good about yourself, that shows up in every aspect of your life. So working on yourself in this way allows you to transform you and your life in ways that you never imagined possible. And if that's something that you're ready for, and you're sick and tired of being in pain in your marriage and in your life and being unhappy, and you're ready to do the work, and you want to see some really big changes, please private message me and we'll set up a 45-minute breakthrough call, see if we're a good fit. And if we're not, I'll let you know, and it'll be a win-win situation because you will walk away with new clarity that you haven't had before. And I would love to talk to see if we're a good fit and watch you transform your life.
Thank you, Karen. It's wonderful sharing this with you. I can tell you're very passionate and you're a true teacher who lives the concepts every day and the challenges that you're finding in your marriage and connecting and building a relationship with yourself. So thank you for sharing so generally. It's a pleasure to share with this. And have a good rest of the day, everybody. And thank you for joining us. And bye-bye.
We'll see you soon. Bye.